Hello, folks, and welcome back to this edition of the Mint Etc. podcast. And as usual, we have a very exciting lineup for you. At least we think it's very exciting because, as usual, we find AI and tech, a lot is happening in the space as with every month. This time around, of course, since Shouvik thought we can also add something on the Samsung trifold smartphones, we'll speak a little bit about India's DHRUV64 microchip. We'll speak about GPT Image 1.5, GPT 5.2, and of course, the transparency index for AI models. So I think this should keep us busy for now. Shavik, what would you like to start with? I mean, the host of topics, take your pick.
In fact, I was very interested in what you were just telling me about the DRUV64 microprocessor. Would you want to sort of take us through, take our viewers and listeners through what this chip is all about? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
curiosity.
So, I mean, this is adds to the kind of local processor pipeline or the indigenous processor pipeline that India is bringing. Now, the interesting part out here is there are national programs like the Digital India Risk 5. Now, Risk is basically a reduced instruction set of computing. So, this is a pretty local way of looking at it and a very sensible way of an sensible architecture, if I were to say. So this risk 5 architecture will give India the support, which it can help to design, test, prototype indigenous chips, which includes the latest one, the ROV 64, which was launched on or released rather on 15th December, this 15th December. Now, I think we all know, we have been
Right.
speaking about this ad nauseum that, microchips are the heart or the brain of modern electronic devices, whether it's mobiles, computers, automobiles, medical equipment, defense systems, and your favorite subject, satellites. So, pretty interesting stuff. Now, those 64
Right.
is suitable as per the government release is suitable for 5G infrastructure, automotive systems, consumer electronics, industrial automation, and the Internet of Things. Shavik, you'll remember clearly that we have spoken about this earlier. That I mean, both of us have covered this in detail. That whenever we talk about these chips or any other thing, we are talking about our semiconductor plants. We have what 10
Right.
semiconductor plants that we have spoken about as of now under process in various stages of construction, right? And these are like
Right.
28 to 40
Absolutely.
nanometers or 28 to 120 nanometers. You can probably give us.
I think it's also important to mention to our viewers at this point that out of these 10 plants, there's only one pure play semiconductor fab, and there's a second compound semiconductor fab, which is in Odisha. So apart from the two, the rest are all
ATMP or the
assembly and
OSATs,
packaging and
basically.
testing plants.
You can just
Yes,
simplify this term like
absolutely.
the outsource semiconductor applications and the ATM.
Right. So OSATs are, of course, for assembly and testing of chips, and ATMP is, of course, for what they call marking and packaging. So yet again, a certain assembly process. So they're not pure play manufacturing per se. So that's also an interesting factor probably to
And
keep
these
in
are also
mind.
being done for the 28 to 40 nanometer. And some, I think. So I
Absolutely,
do believe,
absolutely.
there's tremendous amount of sense because it strengthens the local ecosystem. And if you remember, Shavik, we've had these conversations earlier also that about I said
Right,
less than 5% is actually the chips that are below the 10 nanometer mark, so it's okay. I mean, there's nothing. So
right.
you basically, like, I think what these all these efforts or these initiatives will help India reduce the electronic import bill, because we already have
Absolutely,
an EDSM
absolutely.
ecosystem in India, and that's brilliant. So we can sort of design stuff here. The design ecosystem is pretty robust. Now, where do you fabricate? That's the big
Right.
question. So obviously, you'll be choosing places like Malaysia or some other places. For that matter of fact, I think for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, also please remember that NVIDIA does not make manufacture chips; it designs them. Okay, it gets it
Absolutely.
fabricated either by TSMC mostly, of course, and now, of course, whether it gets it with Intel at some point in time or not, we'll have to see. But see, Samsung would have its own fabrication plants. Intel has its own fabrication, but the foundry part of it, and of course, TSMC is the largest player in the world. So these are the interesting facts. In this light, I mean, it's important to think about what are the kind of local stuff that we are doing. So I think dhruv 64 is the third chip manufactured under the government program for which is the indigenous chip roadmap. I think you had covered this, Shavik, if I remember rightly. So
Right.
yeah, so
Yes,
there are three
absolutely.
chips actually, under this DIRV program. First chip is the JAS 32, very nice sounding name, the JAS 32, which is fabricated at the Siltera facility in Malaysia. Second chip is the JAS 64, okay?
Right.
Again, 32 and 64 as it is self-explanatory. This is manufactured at the semiconductor lab in Mohali. And this Danush
Right.
64 and Danush 64 plus system on a chip, these variants are currently under development. So as of now, this is the clear kind of, I would say, the roadmap that we have at this point in time. So pretty interesting. If you remember, you had the Vega
Right.
thing that we had spoken about.
At this point, Leslie, I would want to ask you, and this is also probably something that many readers and viewers and many people have a question on. Um, of course, like we understand that these chips are not going to go into our smartphones, um, but could you give us a reference in terms of how it can affect us in our daily lives? Would it go into our cars? Would it go into our other electricals like say fans and refrigerators, and how important is it in terms of India's domestic economy? Because of course when you import chips you also kind of rely heavily on other countries and their sort of geopolitical relationships. So is that also an important factor to keep in mind today in the semiconductor world, given that it's very interconnected
No,
all
absolutely. I think it's a
across?
very valid question because India consumes around, I think, 20% of all microprocessors that are manufactured globally. So you know so if you look
Right.
at dhruv 64, what it does is provides India, I would say, a larger talent base with a fully modern processor platform, and now that will help the semiconductor
Right.
ecosystem in India. If you remember, dhruv 64, India already had started expanding its local microprocessor development ecosystem. Examples are, if you remember
Right.
Shakti, which was in 2018, that I think was done with IIT
Or
Madras, if I'm not
right.
mistaken. Now, that was again for the
Right.
space that you love, the space and defense applications. Then Ajit,
Yes,
that
of
was a
course.
microprocessor for industrial and robotic applications. Vikram, that was for
Right.
space applications and navigation, guidance, mission operations. And of course, they have been designed to sort of withstand extreme space conditions because things out in space are very unpredictable. And that's one of the reasons. And then, which I refer to the JAS
Right.
64. That's again 2025. That's done with CDAC. And that's designed precisely for industrial automation. So you have Shakti, Ajit,
Right.
Vikram, the Jazz, and now dhruv 64. So I think if you look at it
Right.
broadly, all of them are being, they're suitable for, as I said, 5G infrastructure, automotive systems, which you mentioned, cars, consumer electronics, but obviously not the ones below 10 nanometer, but overall, the memory chips and all those kind of things, those can be done. Industrial automation,
Right.
IoT. So
Right.
host of applications which cover a very, very broad spectrum of the entire ecosystem. So I think we basically, you are
Right.
asking why?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we'll be able to reduce the electronic equipment bill by a substantial portion if we manage to get our act right. And Shavik, the
Right.
US2 INR, the price, so above 90. So I guess
Yes. Now we're at
91.
91.
So if it's 91, I think it's time, we got to act together. And it also, leverages on the talent that we'll require. So if we have these skill sets in house, it helps reduce the cost of acquisition of talent. That also is a very helpful tool. And
Right.
you and I both have been writing about GCCs. I think the other day
Right.
there was a report saying that GCCs are hiring 4x more employees than even IT companies. Okay, so if
Right.
you look at that, a lot of GCCs do R&D in India. That's the reason why GCCs are, they're becoming innovation hubs. I think a
Right.
lot of these chips can help here
Right.
also.
Right. Pretty exciting times for especially in India's tech ecosystem to live in. And in the interest of time, if we want to move on and but at the same time keep talking about R&D, the folks at Samsung in Korea, Leslie, had heard this feedback from people that foldable smartphones, they're cool, they look good, they seem interesting, but they didn't really serve a purpose, because when you opened a phone and it give you that 8-inch display, the difference between that and a 7-inch smartphone was hardly anything. So they went back to the drawing board. They went to their R&D team, and they've come up with a triple folding Samsung Galaxy. I think it's called Galaxy Z Trifold or something, where it's a phone that folds three times. It's sort of like collapses into one form factor. But when you open it, um, it turns into a 10-inch tablet. I want to straight away start off by asking you, because you've been a long time Samsung user, you've been a long time Android user. Um, would you be interested in such a phone if it told you that you can have it in the shape of a normal phone, but also open it up into a 10-inch
See,
tablet?
as I told you, I was one of the, where I would say a votary of the Nokia communicator, so which is also foldable thing, except that we had the keypad at
Right,
the bottom and the screen, and one screen
right,
outside, a small little screen. In those days, way back, you used to have these small
right,
screens. So I am okay with the idea of a foldable thing. Now, of course, the foldable gives you a seamless screen. Okay, and you don't see the ridges, you don't see the
right,
folds, you don't see the kind of, it's a very seamless kind of look that you have. Um, and Samsung, I mean, is known for its displays. Even iPhone has been using the Samsung displays, so that's, I mean, it has there. I don't think anybody can fault Samsung on its understanding of integration of hardware and software, which I think it does it as well as Apple does it. um, Having said
right,
that, my only problem with these phones is I do not know how long they're going to last. Okay, that's one thing that I need to know. I'm a
right,
clumsy user, so I prefer to avoid these triple folds, because the whole idea of I already carry my laptop with me, a tablet PC. Okay, and then you have a
right,
foldable. Now, if you're dispensing with your tablet, then maybe it's a good idea to have a foldable phone. This is again, it's a subjective view. Okay, there are many people who are sort of multi-device users. I personally would see it, if you're reducing the price point. Okay, I would have to take a call on whether uh, I replace my tablet with the foldable. I mean, I would do
right.
that way, because I wouldn't want to
Absolutely.
carry a foldable device, which is, when I open it up, I guess the size would be that of a tablet. Yeah. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the point that we're trying to make, that, I mean, if you want one device which can probably do it all, that the
very
idea of a
sensible thing,
master
it's a very
device.
sensible thing, but I do not know whether you can do content hardcore. See, we are journalists. At the end of the day, we need to, type, write. We'll require an additional
Right.
keyboard for that. I'm a little old school out here, but
Yes.
if I want to do copious kind of thing, because I'm not a chat gpt guy, so I don't use chat gpt to write my articles.
Right.
We can't use that as journalists. And I hope
Right.
our journalist friends, if they're listening, they should not be doing it unless look at the AI policies very carefully. But having said that, I mean, I guess it depends on the generation you're born into. If you're somebody who's very comfortable with the keyboards offered by tablets and by these foldable, I think you're okay. each to his own.
Right.
It's a matter of
Right.
consumption. But
Right.
Shavik, having said that, if
Absolutely.
you remember, we've had a lot of conversations about rollable TV screens, foldable TV screens. So all these things, see,
Absolutely.
these form factors will have to change. Okay, so I think it's a step in the right
Right.
direction. Everybody is experimenting with what exactly, what do you want to do? So maybe tomorrow you may not even require any device. Everything can become a screen. Your wall can become a screen. These ideas are not new. Okay, we have been speaking about it for the last 2 decades. Now the point is the kind of computing power and the execution of things that go on. Where you take out you flip your phone, just project it onto the wall or wherever, say behind me, or just look at it,
Right.
move screens as they are, and these are all possibilities that have been demonstrated. Okay, they all have been shown as pilots. You
Right.
have been for many CES shows, you have been to underground labs yourself, so you would have seen all these things in action. Our viewers and listeners, anybody listening to some TED talks and CES kind of shows would have seen this. So it's not something new. Why is it not
Right.
happening as of now? Okay, for me, the way I look at it is because the point is, at the end of the day, you have to make it commercial. So people have that price point has to be,
Right.
now I don't know what's the price of
Right.
this trifold smartphone from Samsung.
I think it's I think even I forgot exactly, but I think it's something close to two
Exactly. So
thousand
if you look
dollars.
at $2,000, you have to
Uh,
just try to understand that till the prices drop. When you start getting, this is what happened to all our phones, right? At some point in time, if we start getting trifolds and these dual folds smartphones at a price point which say, I won't say the man on the street, but at least the 50,000 kind of sweet spot. Maybe you might find an inflection point. I don't know whether it will reach
right.
ever, or even if the manufacturers want to make it
Right.
that they want to keep it as a premium product, then so be it.
Right.
But then
Absolutely.
also it also
Absolutely.
raises the question of whether
Well,
they're trying to cannibalize into their own tablet sales. They're okay with that.
that's the other side, because something at a mainstream price point of say around $500, there are also a number of tablets and a number of competing smartphones that say Samsung
Yeah,
itself
so
put
they would
this
have
in it.
thought about all this.
So that also raises. Right.
I
Right.
want you now to talk
Absolutely.
about a little about this GPT Image 1.5. For our viewers and listeners, just a bit of a context. Of course, when Google launched Gemini 3, OpenAI had to sit up and take notice. Why OpenAI? Even NVIDIA had to sit up and take notice because the TPUs were sort of
Right.
came into the news because Gemini 3 runs completely on tensor processing units rather than gaming graphics processing units or the GPUs,
Right.
which sort of was a red flag for. It's not that Google does not use GPUs, but remember that it made an open statement, and that was a
Right.
wake up call even for Nvidia. But for OpenAI, all the more because when it launched
Right.
Gemini 3, it was pitted straight directly against GPT 5.1. And of course, as expected, I think we all
Right.
knew that, okay, some other release or upgrade is going to come, and there we had 5.2. Now, I think the same happened because Gemini 3, alongside Gemini 3, Google released Nano Banana Pro. And so now we have Image 1.5. Shavik, you have been using both of them. I used Nano Banana initially, was a bit disappointed. I heard that you told me that Nano Banana Pro is much, much better. What's your sense on this 1.5 versus Nano Banana
Right.
Pro?
Well, firstly, I think, Leslie, the idea, I think um, there is this sense of excitement, which I think the first generation of Nano Banana created among users. This idea that AI can do anything. This was sort of like the first instances where people could. It was almost like the first ChatGPT moment, when the first time ChatGPT came out and people could see that ChatGPT could write an article based on like 2 words of prompts. And I think Nano Banana was one of those moments where people could actually see it for themselves, because it was also free to use for so many people. So there was a sense of disbelief that, can it really do this? Can it actually do photo editing to the level of a Photoshop project? just based on a few text prompts that I would give. And I think OpenAI kind of saw the buzz that Google created. They also saw the impact that Nano Banana had. Google had put out numbers, I think 1.3
Yeah.
crore users in 4 hours of release of Nano Banana. So that's incredible. So, so I think ChatGPT images are the latest image push from OpenAI is a step in that direction, because OpenAI is also exploring multiple ways of trying to generate serious revenue. And one way of doing that is to go the image generation and creative illustrations way, because as we've seen, many reports say that the digital marketing and creative marketing side, and the creative design side of our industries today, that's the one side that's going to be probably disrupted the most to begin with. So ChatGPT images, to what I can see, is a direct answer to enterprises wondering if OpenAI missed that bus or they just didn't do it. So this is OpenAI saying, "Hey, look,
Now,
our GPT
Shawik,
models are
you made an
exactly
interesting
as good
statement
as
about
generating."
enterprises. Now, this is where I probably I'm not really fully in agreement. But there's a reason for that, and probably I think you're on the same page. You must have used enterprise, a little
Right,
loosely, but at this point in time, just look at the user part of it. When I'm using it as an individual user, I'm, I don't think anybody is going to sue me, or they think people would hardly take notice, because maybe I don't have
right,
as much of a following, or maybe it doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. Companies are not going to waste my time. But
right,
if any image has been created, like look at the ruckus that Ghibli created, right? Those Ghibli styled images created when OpenAI had launched its image generation tool, right? Now,
right. Absolutely.
this a similar thing could happen if the proper licenses are not acquired. Because if you look at Adobe, you look at Canva, they have acquired licenses for certain images. So it's a very kind of
Right,
transparent
right,
process. I am not very sure about
right,
what happens with this for use in enterprises, whether enterprises will take this kind of an image generation tool very seriously. I'm, I'm not sure about that.
right. No, absolutely, and you're totally right, because I think the eventual goal, which is what a lot of people say, is that if the model behind ChatGPT images or Nano Banana can be exported as a framework and put on copyrighted data for enterprises, that is something that they're interested in, because clearly the model really works. But on that note, Leslie, in fact, very interestingly, you mentioned Adobe. Adobe also has its
Yeah.
Firefly AI platform, and since day one, I think Shantanu Narayan, and
That is an answer
this
to
year, earlier
Canva.
this year, we were at Adobe's Global Summit. Absolutely. And because Adobe has said time and again that, we might be behind the AI conversation because of the way we are doing it, but we are only going to offer you AI image generation only on copyrighted images that we have in our library. So if you as a company want this sort of an AI, you can take our platform and use it, but it will be on a much, much smaller subset. um, ChatGPT images and Google's Nano Banana, of course, represented the endless possibilities. We were seeing people create a 1920s version of their
Yeah,
own
those
photos. They
cartoons.
were taking out photos of their grandparents and sort of trying to upscale them. And we all know how difficult upscaling used to be once upon a time, when the early days of digital imaging. So I think it's kind of playing a tricky balance. And this is where I also feel Adobe is going to be very relevant in this conversation. But interesting that OpenAI is also making a push into image generation, because clearly that's where the
Yeah,
user interest
absolutely.
is,
I
Leslie.
fully agree. I concur with these things. And of course, it brings us to a final leg of the episode where we're going to talk about credibility and trust. So, if you look at this year's foundational, the
Right,
Foundation Model Transparency Index, which is the FMTI, as it's a short form acronym. We love acronyms. So that it sort of, confirmed our suspicion that most companies continue to be opaque when it comes to disclosing information about the AI models. So I don't think there was anything new. But the
right,
interesting part was that companies evaluated by this index posted an average score of 41. Now, this was a 17-point drop from last year. Of course, it was 4 points higher than in 2023. IBM topped the rankings for the third consecutive year, scoring 95. Uh, and the second and third ranked firms also slipped in comparison to their 2024 thing. Index for the first time assessed four companies this time, including two Chinese firms, DeepSeek and Alibaba. Both scored poorly at 32 and 26. This is despite their releasing open weight models. Open weight models means basically the source is not known, but the parameters, etc., are open sourced, but not the core of the model. The other new entrants were XAI, Grok, Elon Musk's, and Midjourney. They were tied in for the lowest score at 14. So now a little about the FMTI, this index, is that it's developed by researchers from Stanford's University's Center for Research on Foundation Models, the MIT Media Lab, and Princeton University. So I mean, it's a tremendous amount of credibility, and some highlights that the training data continues
Of
to be
course.
opaque. Okay, I'm just very shortly putting it, and this continues to be the case in 2025 as was in 2024. So, of course, you can go and read the entire report. It's online. So just type in FMTI, Stanford, and you'll get all the details. But I think it just, sort of reinforce or confirms the view that we have been talking about, that in when talking about AI, when talking about AI models, when talking about any tech for that matter of fact, it is all about one, of course, enhancing the user engagement, enhancing the customer experience, but at the same time establishing credibility and trust.
Absolutely. I just want to understand one point here, Leslie, is that um, typically algorithms, and this is something you and I have also had discussions on before, that typically algorithms have always
Black.
been, they've always had a notorious reputation for being a black box. The explainability has always been an issue. And we're hearing increasingly regulators around the world talk about transparency and the need for audits and data audits. But tech companies have kept pushing back, saying it's almost impossible for them to sort of sift through trillions of data points. Yeah. It's sort of like they themselves saying that, listen, this is something that probably we ourselves wouldn't want to do. So, where do we stand on that note? Is it even possible for transparency to actually be a thing? Or is it something that will remain in the activism
Okay.
radar and we'll talk
I
about
mean,
it every now and then
it's a
and
very
forget
interesting
about it?
question. I mean, it's. I think we'll be talking about this very question for the next 20 years, 30 years. I mean, and the next generations will talk about the same
Right,
thing. I think it's imperative that you have explainability, but to what extent? What are you going to explain? So that is the whole question. Because if you do not
right.
understand enough of a technology, what are you really going to explain? Let me give you an example. AI is one part of it. Now, tomorrow, if you're talking about artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence, okay, that whatever
Right.
level you want to define it, whether you want to take a deep mind kind of explanation of the levels of AGI, or if you even want to understand it at as smart as a human being or smarter than that, because remember, this is all crowdsourced. It has trained on crowdsourced data. You and I have given the data. Now
Right.
it would be as intelligent as the smartest in the human race, or even much smarter. There are no surprises out here. And remember, it way back also, almost like in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, it beat Jeopardy players, IBM, Deep Blue, right? Okay, so
Right.
brute force,
Right.
and then you're using next word prediction engines or stochastic parrots to do the same. What kind of transparency can you get in a black box? You can only start understanding the black box to whatever extent is possible, right? So the point is,
Right.
if at any given point in time, AI agents, which are, they can take actions on their own, if they become smarter than you, they might not even disclose their smartness to you. They might act dumb and, in the background act smarter. And this is not something that Leslie is saying. These are papers by peer-to-peer reviewed papers that have been put out on groups like Archive, etc., where reviewers have time and
Right.
again cautioned Now you have the godfather of AI also, one of the godfathers of AI, who talks about Jeffrey Hinton, who talks about these kind of moves. You will know Harari and all those. They have been talking about it. Having said that, I will also
Right.
add, in the light of this entire transparency and explainable AI context, is people like Fei Fei Li. Okay, she's the godmother of AI, considered to be the godmother of AI, and Yan Li Kun, of course,
Right.
who was Meta chief AI scientist till recently, who has now started his own company. Now they say that AI is not even sort of not even reached the level where it can compete with a human child, for instance, on the thought process. Now there are these
Right.
two. Even
Right.
Andrew Ning would veer on the side of Fefeli and Yan Li Kun. Now, if you look at these opposing kind of comments,
Right.
what do you make of it? Here are people who understand the technology much better than you and I. Okay, 100 times better, because they are actually
Right.
developing these tools on a daily
Right.
basis. So, are they right?
Right.
Or who's right now? If you to look at Jeffrey Hinton, he's got a very valid point of view, among the deep learning subset. But then so has Fei Li also created ImageNet. Yan LeCun is also has contributed tremendously to convolutional neural networks. So just look at it. We are in a very
Right.
phase where we are trying to understand the technology. Policymakers, and I'm not saying all, I'm not, sort of carpet bombing any policymaker, but I'm saying most, I the policymakers that I have interacted with don't really know much about technology. They're trying to understand the technology. Okay, I'm not saying everybody has to be a deep learning
Right.
expert, but you have to have a sound understanding of the technology to even comment on it very intelligibly. If you have not done programming, it's a little hard to
Right.
understand this thing. So you have to make these efforts to at least read up a lot on these subjects, which you and I also do. See, we are no experts in this field, right? We don't come with computer science
Right.
backgrounds that we can understand
Absolutely.
this, but we also on a daily basis have to
Absolutely.
upgrade a hard disk, I would
Absolutely.
say, to keep pace and understand. So when we
Right.
are talking about explainable AI, we'll have to figure out all these things. Policymakers also have to put in that tremendous amount of it. It is an ongoing effort, Shavik. It will always remain an ongoing effort.
Right.
Okay, because AI will keep pace.
I think that's the biggest significance, Leslie, of a transparency report like this is that it puts the spotlight on all these factors and also tells us where we stand in terms of probably one of the most transformational piece of technology ever, in fact.
Wait for quantum.
Right. That's
We'll
that's
have to see
that's the
that
other
also
part.
now, because AI plus quantum, I don't know.
Right.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around AI now and quantum bit, and then the other kind of technologies we have haven't hardly spoken about. Like Feifei Li talks about spatial intelligence. Somebody else talks about something else. I'm telling you, we are in a fun era. I would say very exciting times. What is the Chinese
Right.
phrase? May you live in
Yeah,
exciting
absolutely.
times.
Right.
So I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, I mean, so viewers and listeners, I think we have been, the Chinese proverb was meant more as, a kind of a, okay, so you want to, I won't say a curse, but something close to that when you say, okay, may you live in exciting times, okay, kind of a statement. And
Right.
maybe we probably can do with a little less excitement also at times. So, but AI policies will always have to play catch up with these technologies. Meanwhile, as we said, we started with the DHRUV 64 chips. Then we went on to the trifold smartphones. We had a lovely comparison between Image 1.5 of GPT, and of course your Nano Banana Pros. And then, of course, we spoke about the transparency index. Anything else that you want us to discuss, please feel free to drop us a line, and we'll be more than happy to discuss or even get an outside expert to comment on these subjects. Shavik, we should do that, I think so. Once in a while, we'll start getting some.
Yeah, I think we should do next week for our
Yes,
Christmas
yes,
special
yes.
episode. Why not?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So next week, folks, will Shavik and I actually will weigh in on the kind of five trends that he has in mind, five trends that I am. Some of these trends might actually overlap with each other, but we'll have a nice Christmas. Uh, what would you call it? A trend-setting episode for you.
Tech
Tech in
in
Christmas, or
Christmas.
Christmassy tech, or something like
That's
that.
the worst title that I could come up with.
Absolutely. So, viewers and for listeners, wish you a lovely weekend and looking forward to this Christmas season. Shavik, you also have a lovely weekend.
Yes, thank you, Leslie, and thank you everyone for
Thank you.
joining in.